going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and this is our twice weekly, but sometimes once weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this time we are back with more of our reviews of the Brothers War side stories, aka present day, with Chapter 3, Nemesis, by Reinhard Suarez. My quick review at the top of this one is, I thought this one was fine. I think it's important to read this one to understand where they're going with a character who's been around for a while and in a direction that I didn't see them taking this character. And so you should read it for that reason. Do I think it's the right thing to do? I'll say no, but also I guess I can wait and see. But still, it will be important. This story seems to be the one that will help you understand where this character goes in the future. That's what I think.
Okay, I thought the story was good. I kind of liked it, what they did with the character. Did it make sense? No, not really.
Yeah, it was very weird.
But I kind of liked it.
Okay. So, hey, if either of those quick reviews make the story sound interesting to you and you have not gotten a chance to read it yet, or if you have and you just want a refresher, the top link in the description down below will take you to this story so that you can read it for yourself. Please feel free. And then, of course, if you're going to go do that, we would love it if afterwards you would come back here and join us as we can go through our full review itself, because we want this series to be a discussion. So when we give you our opinions, they're just that, they're our opinions. So if you have opinions that differ, maybe you thought the same, maybe you there was something that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about because you liked it, or because you disliked it, or because you had a question about it. Whatever the case may be, we want to hear from you in those comments down below. So please feel free to leave your thoughts there. Keep the conversation going with us and your fellow viewers. But before we get on to the full review itself, hi, welcome to the channel. Thanks so much for being here. Please don't forget, while you're here, if you're enjoying the things that we're doing here on this Geek for All family of channels, to subscribe and ring that bell so you will get notified whenever any of our videos come out, including whenever we go live, which is every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this channel. Mondays, we play MTG Arena. So if you're a fan of Magic the Gathering, this Monday will be the first time, not counting the early access event, where we will be playing Brothers War Limited. Because if you're unaware, that's typically like 99% of what we do on Monday nights is we play Limited. So sealed, draft, whatever the case may be, we will be playing the Brothers War Limited this Monday, and we would love to have you there. Hop into chat, say hey, watch the games, talk about things that don't relate to Magic, because that's most of the time what we do anyway, and then occasionally discuss what's going on the screen as well, whatever it happens to be. And then Friday, we play whatever video game we happen to be playing at the time. This Friday will be a mystery, because we are starting a new game. And so you should definitely tune in, like I said, 8 p.m. Eastern for that. And then last but not least, a quick reminder that we have two other channels. I said it was a family of channels, because we have Video Games for All and Gluten Free for All. Those links also down in the description box below, and you should sub and ring the bells there as well. But onto the full review itself. This story kind of started out, I felt, a lot more punishing for newer readers who wanted to understand everything that they were coming across. It kind of leveled out for a while, but I think it started with a lot of discussions of like Alara and Tezzeret and Nicol Bolas's relationship, Johnny and Nicol Bolas's relationship, and the story I think explained it a bit, but for me, as the person that I am, the type of person that I am, I would want more than that. And maybe that's just me. Maybe for a newer reader, they read that and that was a perfect description for them, and that's perfect. Right. That's great. I'm not that guy, right? When I hear about that relationship, it's like, well, why was that relationship so contentious? Where can I go to learn more about that? And so like that kind of stuff frustrates me a little bit, because like I'm tangentially aware of what occurred in that story, but like if it had something like, I don't know, I'm a comic book reader, right? I love comics, and there was always that moment where there was that little asterisk right? Of like, oh my god, it's Tezzeret. The last time I saw him was, when he was attacking that orphanage, right? Look, comic books, right? But, he was attacking that orphanage, and then there's a little asterisk, and then in the bottom corner it was like, see Captain America number 25, 1997. Whatever it was, it would clue you into where you could go to look at it. Now, I'm I'm reading this on the internet. So, if it was a free story, which it was not for Alara, I'm almost certain, like 99% sure, but you could still link to or mention the name of the book, and then I could just Google that because I'm on the internet, right? So like in a comic book, if I'm holding a physical comic book and it says see Captain America number 25, 1997, I have to go to a store. I mean, I guess these days I would just also look online for it, I suppose,
right.
But you could go to a comic book shop and say, hey, in this comic it mentions Captain America number 25, 1997. Do you have that comic book? And hopefully they would be able to take you to it. So maybe I'm spoiled, maybe that's unrealistic of me, but you're talking about this stuff that happened previously. If these are newer readers who have recently gotten into your story, why would you not want them to go read your prior stories? I mean, the answer is because if it's a novel that they have to go read from the past, they're buying it on the secondary market, so you're not getting any money off of it. So I kind of get it, I suppose. But people will be more invested in your story if you give them the full picture of it, especially if you have a lore master who is trying to keep the story consistent, and you have authors that are working very hard to discuss the stories that occurred previously and do them justice. Then you would want your newer readers to be able to see those Easter eggs and appreciate them more without having to, again, talk about the secondary market, without having to go to a YouTube channel that's like, the 10 Easter eggs that you missed in the Brothers War story.
Right.
So I thought that was a little confusing in the beginning with those types of references to the past, and then even when we get to the section where it talks about kind of descending into the middle of the plane or near the middle of the plane, and you've got discussions of Memnarch and things like that. We went to MTG Wiki and just read the quick article on Memnarch just to remind ourselves of what that was about. The story told you a bit of it, but there was a lot more that it didn't tell.
Right.
A lot more. And so, especially Karn's relationship with it, why Karn was able to know how to open that door to get into that tower. I don't know. Again, that's me. When we're in this type of a situation and we're looking back on those stories, I want to know where this information comes from.
Okay.
So that I can go look at it myself, not because I'm a YouTuber and I'm running a channel where I would want to have all the information, although that doesn't hurt, but because I'd be curious to read those stories so that I could know where these characters came from, literally, figuratively, where they were previously at any point. Again, I don't know if that's unreasonable, but
I'd like to think I'm worse than you on that.
Okay.
In that, certain stories that mention certain things, I will spend, 2.5 hours researching things so that I can talk for 10 minutes in the episode about what I've researched.
Right.
But that's not story-based stuff. That's real life stuff.
Yeah, you'll do the historical deep dives of what happened here on Earth
right.
that this is referencing or similar to or whatever.
Right.
Sure.
Or if there's a name that I've heard before or that I know exists as a name prior to Magic the Gathering creating it as a name.
Sure.
I'll look up the name. I'll find out what it means. I'll see if there are parallels between what the name means and the aspects of the character's character.
Right.
And personality. And things like that. But, I don't know. I think, and maybe it's a little silly to say that they should provide a link to MTG Wiki because it's a fan-made site and not...
It's a fan-made site, and from what I've heard, at times it's not perfect.
Right.
All of their posts are not perfect and up-to-date and correct.
Right.
which happens, by the way. I'm not faulting anybody for that, because I wouldn't be. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it. Well, no. I mean, like, most of them are good. What I'm saying is not all of them are, but I can't fault them for, like, if they have, like, 200 posts on there and, like, 5 of them are, like, somewhat inaccurate, right? It's not, like, it's not,
overwhelmingly bad.
Yeah, or purposefully done. That's the word I was looking for. It's not, like, purposeful where they're like, ha ha ha. You're like, people will mess this up. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? So.
No. But, yeah, I mean, I didn't mind, like, the information that you provided once you looked at MTG Wiki about these characters and these places and these things,
sure.
Right? I think that information was enough. Do I think we needed to look them up in order to find out enough information? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but do I want to go back and read the story where they talked about that one person that one time doing that one thing? No.
Right, so you at that point you prefer the summarized version just to get us up to speed so that we can be where we need to be, but you wouldn't then want to be like, oh my god, I have to go read that novel.
Right, because now because it becomes a slippery slope at that point. You're reading one story and now you're being told of 3 other stories that exist that are going to further explain what they're explaining in this story. And so now you're going to go read 3 additional stories? That doesn't make any sense.
It's true.
You know, especially for us where we have to now sit and do a review video of this story. We need to at least know what we're talking about enough. Like, we looked up the information and found out more, but we wouldn't be able to sit down and film this video if not for the fact that we were able to read the summarized version as opposed to now having to read a whole second story or a whole third story or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. I mean, it sucks a little bit because I kind of feel like you shouldn't have to do that. Maybe they could do like a summarizing thing like in the margin or like a key or something that then, or links that take you to like short articles on those things, or like one short article that just has like a paragraph per thing you might inquire about or something like that. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they've done...
Or at least, like, everything's all in one place, and they're linking to it, as opposed to you kind of have to search the internet for it and figure it out on your own.
Right. Yeah, they just don't have that. Like, it just doesn't exist. Like, it's not even like it exists, but they don't have they're not able to put up a link for it, or they just don't put up a link for it. It doesn't exist by their hand.
Right.
Right? So again, MTG Wiki, not owned by Wizards of the Coast, not operated by Wizards of the Coast. It is a completely separate entity. And so Wizards would not, unless they were, I mean, like, if I were MTG Wiki, I would not allow Wizards to just put up links to my content in theirs without some form of recognition, whether that be actual payment, which of course would be the best because capitalism, but also, like, even if it's for exposure, it would have to be a fair bit of exposure to get you to that point where even if it's like product of some kind or whatever the case may be, again, I'm not trying to speak for MTG Wiki. I have no concept of what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. That's not my point. But I would say that what you're requesting, while a fair request, I think is way too outlandish for them to actually do it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, is that offensive? I hope not. I'm not trying to...
I think what you're suggesting is more outlandish than what I'm suggesting, but you think the opposite.
Well, I think, because again, I think that they're not going to make those articles. They're not going to take the time. They're not going to pay somebody, they being Wizards, to make the individual articles, to summarize all the things that you might need to understand all that stuff. And so to a degree, they leave it up to the content creators to do it. And so then you, if you're interested, can go seek out those content creators making that content, I suppose.
But then they should, if that's what they're gonna do, then they should sponsor a specific content creator to do it every time.
I mean, arguably they do.
Okay.
And there's like the tiniest bit of salt and jealousy here, but also just acknowledging like that I'm shouting out your information. So like you guys get infinitely more viewers than we do anyway. So there should be no shade being thrown here. It's just a fact that the person that they hired as their lore master also does a podcast called Vorthos Cast. So like any inside information that was used to make these stories, that information would then be disseminated on the podcast made by the person who told them the information that they should be using to put in little Easter eggs, right? So
I just assumed that the podcast was like separate and apart from the stories as they were coming out.
I mean, it is and it isn't. So in between the story, like when they're done covering the stories that just came out, they'll talk about other things.
Okay.
But they've got the inside track on what's coming up next. So they know what things to cover and like what's relevant and like what Easter eggs to discuss and talk about, because one of the members of the podcast is the person who gives that information to the company. So like it's what, like, that's why I'm saying it's I don't know, like
It's a little weird.
it's like, you know, the unfair advantage aspect. But again, I'm trying not to be like, well, we would have more. That's not it at all what I'm saying.
No.
Because they had more viewers well before he got hired as their lore master. So, and I think the stuff that they do is great, by the way. It's just that it's a lot tougher when, you know, they've been reading stories a lot longer than we have. And that's why, like, nobody came to me, and I'm not asking for that, right? So, we will continue to review the stories based on the information that we have. But, I mean, I guess I encourage you to go check out the Vorthos Cast if you want to know all the Easter eggs, because we're not going to be the people to tell them to you. We don't have that information or that knowledge. We just don't. And that's disappointing for me, but also, I can't take the time to do that because we don't financially benefit from doing the show. We just do it because we like the stories,
Right.
and want to keep doing it for that reason.
Yeah, I guess I just am not well enough acquainted with that channel enough to be able to say, like, oh, okay. So every time a story comes out, they're going over that story. Like,
No, that's not what I'm saying at all, because again, the stories come out 8 days in a row. Like, they do either a weekly show or again, I don't have all the information on their content. It's not something that I have knowledge of. But the frequency with which they put out episodes, the information that they discuss is going to be a lot more informative than the information that we do, because we are only working off of what is on the page and the knowledge that we have of the prior stories that we have read, but that knowledge is not as encyclopedic as the folks on that podcast or any other organization, possibly, right? I don't know a lot of the other Vorthos content out there, and I'm not trying to say that we're competing with them, because we're not. we're definitely not. So, in fact, if you want, you are more than welcome to, in the comments down below, no links, please, because YouTube won't let you in the first place, but you can write the names of some of the creators that you might enjoy that do other Vorthos stuff. Maybe that would give us an opportunity to check out some other things in our free time, which is very few and far between, but we will give it a try. Hey, let's get back to what we were, you know, the story that we're reviewing here today. So, obviously, the character that I was talking about in the beginning is Tezzeret. And it seems like they're trying to redeem Tezzeret, or at least make him a sympathetic villain, so that, like, even though he's doing bad things, you're, like, understanding why he's doing it, as opposed to just, oh, he's just an evil jerk. Like, now he's helping Jace and company he's helping, or trying to, in a roundabout way, help Kaya, right, in hiring her to seek out Vorinclex and things like that.
Okay.
We'll get more into that. But right now, he is working for the Phyrexians in order to get himself a new body. Because the planar bridge is currently inside of him. It is his chest, basically.
Iron Man.
It's a lot worse than that, I assure you. And he is aware of the fact that the planar bridge is slowly killing him from the inside. And the Phyrexians, specifically Elish Norn it seems, but the Phyrexians have promised him a new body made entirely of dark steel. Which, for anybody that's ever played with a dark steel card, knows that dark steel cards are, in the card version and I guess in the flavor version, indestructible. So, he wants an indestructible body, and they've offered it to him. We'll find out later how that works out for him, but, you know, that's what he's working towards. And it's...
Everybody's got a goal.
Yeah. More like everybody's got a price.
Yeah.
And that's his. So he can be bought with that. And so even though, like, this is what he's going for, he hasn't gotten there yet. They haven't given him what he wants yet. And so he is basically acquiescing to whatever they ask. Like, he's doing it, you know, like a grumpy old man. Right, he's just like, oh, fine, whatever, blah, 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 you know, like trudging along and dragging his feet. But he eventually is going to do whatever they ask because he's dying.
Right.
And this is the only way that he has found to save himself. And he's Tezzeret. So if there was another way, he would have probably found it. So this is the way that he is seeking out to survive the planar bridge being inside of him and killing him slowly from the inside. And if he has to face some indignities along the way, he seems to be willing to a degree, because the ends will justify the means.
Right.
Based on how he's acting. We also find out that Elish Norn has locked herself in the lower levels of the plane among the mycosynth lattice. And even the other creators aren't allowed in. Now, shortly after we hear that no one's allowed in, Tezzeret gets invited there.
Right.
So, okay, I mean, I guess, you know, you gotta precipitate a story, so that's something. Ajani is in this story. Mm-hmm. Isn't he? He sure is. We know that Ajani was the sleeper agent, that he was completed, that he is a Phyrexian. We have not seen Tamio since the end of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, but we've heard about her. But we have now seen Ajani again since the end of Dominaria United, where we saw that he was completed. Ajani is kind of fully in the cult, right? He has fully drank the Kool-Aid because he was completed, so of course, it's not a surprise. And he's talking about, like, glory to Phyrexia and working together and all these other things as Phyrexians working together. And then one of the things that he does, that the story has him do, and it's funny because the story, kind of like I talked about, right? The story then explains it, but thankfully we knew it enough to have gotten it before the story explained it. But Ajani at one point takes off his white cloak and gives it to Tezzeret to clean himself up. Because he's a little messy and unkempt. For those of you that know the story, and the story, again, the story tells you, but again, something that we were thankfully aware of, wasn't too far back where we didn't know, that cloak that he wears is part of Elspeth's old cloak. That he, Ajani, used to wear, or wears, / now used to wear, following Elspeth's death on Theros, on Theros to remember her by. And the kind of heartbreaking aspect of seeing that art on Ajani cards immediately following Theros, or I guess Journey into Nyx in that way, whether it was a core set or whatever it might have been, that was like, oh my god, he's wearing her cloak? Like, that's, oh my god, that's so sad. And meanwhile now, Ajani's just like, oh, here, and just hands it over.
Have this rag to clean up your mess.
Yep. And Tezzeret is the one who points out, for the purpose of the story, right, for the readers.
Yeah, not because Tezzeret is supposed to know that story, right?
I mean, I guess he knows. I don't remember. It was a little bit ago that we read that section.
It seemed like it was just narrative convenience.
Maybe.
Not necessarily that his character knows that or cares.
I truly don't remember. It's possible that he does. And if he does, you can let us know in the comments down below. But yeah, that little like dig sucked a little bit. I get why they had to do it. So I respect it. I'm not mad that they did it. I'm just mad. Like, if that makes, it's sad, and so it makes me angry.
Well, it's supposed to make you mad.
Exactly. And so success, right? Well done.
They did it.
Okay. Then we get to a portion in the story where they allude to, they don't use his name, but they allude to Urza, because they talk about Karn's creator, because of course they do, because it's this set. And the last time that we were on a side story, Joda was talking about Urza blatantly with Kaya and Teferi and Saheeli, etc. So it seems like a lot of these stories are going to mention Urza because, there's 3 Urza cards in the set, and 3 Mishra, but there's 3 Urza cards in the set, so it's not a surprise to me that the set The Brothers War is going to talk about one of the brothers in all these stories. And then, to add on to, by the way, Tezzeret's going to be redeemed in some capacity, Tezzeret kind of talks about his daddy issues for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And just kind of outwardly displays that and presents that to the world. And it's like, okay, I guess we're supposed to just feel bad for you now because you had a shit father? Like,
I don't know if you're supposed to feel bad for him. I think you're just supposed to relate to him instead of kind of always feeling like he is some sort of entity that you could never relate to because he's just this evil guy.
I guess. Yeah. I think I read Tezzeret, right? I talked about comic books, so I apologize if I go a little over people's heads here. I'll try my best to explain, and you can maybe reel me in if I get a little too in the weeds. I relate Tezzeret to a Mr. Sinister type character. Mr. Sinister from the X-Men franchise. He was not technically depicted in any of the movies, to my recollection, except a teaser at the end of the Age of Apocalypse movie. But Mr. Sinister was a minion, so to speak, like a higher level goon or thug of Apocalypse, who is like a very big time enemy of the X-Men. And Apocalypse was able to basically take over the planet, and Mr. Sinister was like one of his 4 horsemen, or one of his like main generals, if you will. But Mr. Sinister is a very smart man. And so while Mr. Sinister, read Tezzeret in this case, is present serving all of these big bads, again, read Nicol Bolas, the Phyrexians, etc., he has his own machinations. And at any moment, he is thinking about what he can utilize as leverage to get out of any particular situation that he needs to get out of, with as much to benefit himself as possible. So in this case, Tezzeret / Mr. Sinister is going to try to get the Darksteel body, any information that he can about the Phyrexians, possibly because he's working for Urabrask, pitting the Phyrexians against one another, so that he either has the opportunity to take over once the dust settles or get the hell out of there to protect himself.
Right.
Right? But regardless of what it is, he's totally willing to play both sides against the middle and then either run when it gets too tough or again try to step in and lead. Mr. Sinister did very similar things when it came to being Apocalypse's lackey, because when Apocalypse started losing, Mr. Sinister would go to the other side and say, hey, by the way, you know, this is how you can get out Apocalypse. Why don't you go for it? And then when people started sneaking in behind Apocalypse's back, Mr. Sinister grabbed all of his genetic testing and information that he had gathered through his time working for Apocalypse and effed off. And so then when Apocalypse fell, and then the good guys started looking for Mr. Sinister, what a surprise, he was nowhere to be found.
He was conveniently missing.
And again, very similar.
With all of the things that he was working on, all of his research.
Very similar things happened to Tezzeret after Nicol Bolas went down. Tezzeret went off on his own. And in War of the Spark Forsaken, they kind of went looking for him, but he was still able to get away. And now he's doing very, very similar things. He's working for Elish Norn and, like, you know, kissing her feet and promising to do whatever it is that she asks, while sitting there saying, look, I'm working for Urbrask here, in his mind, saying, I'm working for Urbrask here, whatever he wants, that's what we're going to do. But also, let's not be surprised if shit hits the fan and Tezzeret goes, oh, I'm sorry, someone needs me over here. Or, oh, I'm also helping Jace, and I'm working with Kaya. So if Urbrask goes down, but also Elish Norn looks like she's going to go down, Tezzeret's going to go up to the Planeswalkers and say, hey, guys, I've been helping you this whole time. I'm your best friend, aren't I? Like, any group that he could possibly be a part of, he's going to be a part of to try to get out of this situation. That's exactly what it seems like. It's exactly what it looks like. And so that's why I say he reminds me of Mr. Sinister in that way. If you have other, like, you know, does Starscream work that way as well from Transformers? Let me know in the comments down below what other characters are that way and follow that kind of trope of, like, someone who's a high-ranking individual but still beholden to somebody else, but who is trying their best to, like, usurp them or do whatever in that way, because that's sure a thing. But yeah, so I feel like the story was, like, telling you about his daddy issues and, like, his problems with his father, as well as showing you his feelings towards, like, oh my god, the Phyrexians humbled a Johnny, or, like, captured a Johnny. Nicol Bolas couldn't do that, and Nicol Bolas wanted to do that, and it almost sounded like Tezzeret was upset about that. Not because he would have wanted to do it or anything like that, but because he was like, wow, you know, I always looked at a Johnny as this super impactful character that's very strong and that Nicol Bolas even had trouble with, but now the Phyrexians just got him, seemingly like that, very quickly and easily. What? What's
pointing at you?
Why? Because that's how I feel? God damn it. I felt like that's what Tezzeret... Am I wrong? I felt like that's what Tezzeret was saying.
I mean, I feel like what he was saying was that, oh, shoot. Like, I was able to kind of overpower and or, like, get away from Nicol Bolas's clutches when I needed to. And that might not be as possible for me with the Phyrexians if a Johnny is just all of a sudden now whatever they want a Johnny to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, oh, right, I wrote it down here. That combined with the size of the army of the Phyrexians, they did a really good job of trying to say, hey, remember that last villain? And how tough the War of the Spark was? And now we're going into Phyrexia All Will Be One, March of the Machines, etc. That's going to be worse. Just be aware that's going to be worse. You're aware that's worse, right? Like, they need you to know that that's worse.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, why would you care, right? Because War of the Spark was so shit, story-wise, right? They need you to understand that this is going to be bigger and worse than that, so let's be afraid. Let's ramp it up. Be aware that The Phyrexians are worse, guys. You know that the Phyrexians are worse than Bolas. Here's why, right? They were able to take down Ajani, whereas Nicol Bolas, every plan that he made partially concerned dealing with Ajani. Nicol Bolas's army of Eternals was this big. The Phyrexians' army, that's this big, right? All of the things working together to show you how much worse this new enemy is, which I get it. You might run into the Marvel problem of like, how do you follow up Endgame, right? And the ending of Endgame with that massive fight with something else now in like Secret Wars or whatever. Like, how will you do that? And so we'll see if, like, this one being bigger and badder than the last one is fine. We'll see if there's another one after that and what that looks like, you know, like how will they do that bigger and badder than before?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then we get to stuff that you wanted to talk about, so I apologize for the delay.
No need.
But there were some quotes that you had me write down for this story. Spoilers, this one is real long.
Yes, it is.
But
right.
it's fine. That's the second one. The first one is Elish Norn talking to Karn. Because Karn brutally was cut to pieces in this story. Brutal descriptions. Like, you were like begging me to stop reading it. I was like, I can't. We have to read the story. But it was. The descriptions were rough for this one, for sure. But Elish Norn talking to Karn, she says, "Things have been difficult between us. But when you learn how we have been carrying forward your dream, you will understand why we did what we did to you. What we will do to you. Not as a punishment, no, but as penance."
Yeah, I wanted you to write down that quote because there were definitely some moments in this story that very closely mirrored abuse, if not just blatantly were abuse.
Sure.
And that was a quote that I felt was, in particular, very indicative of what an abuser would say and or be thinking when they were telling you what you wanted to hear. You know, just... Yeah, like the very specific words. Things have been difficult between us. So, like, an acknowledgement of the fact that they have a terrible relationship, but not enough of an acknowledgement to say, I'm sorry about that. I acknowledge that I did something wrong there and I'm taking responsibility for it. Instead, they're saying, sorry, my throat got very dry. Instead, they're sitting there saying, you know, but when you learn of all of these things that we're doing for you, even though it's against your consent, basically, you know, it's your dream. I promise it's not mine. You know, you'll understand, you know, one day you'll appreciate that we did this for you. And, you know, it's not me punishing you when I abuse you. Yep. No, it's...
Yeah, so don't look at it like that, because that would be wrong. You're wrong for thinking that.
It's penance because you deserve what I'm doing to you.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's very indicative of what an abuser is, how they think, and a lot of times, you know, the victim is a victim. You know, the victim is, my head's over there and my torso's over there and I can't get away.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I can't get away.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not what the victim's thinking, right? Sometimes the victim is thinking, oh, do I deserve it?
Right. Leaning
You
in,
know?
like believing the gaslighting, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I thought that was an extremely good quote to just, I'm so sorry, to just, you know, really show how that is, how this story is showing abuse as opposed to like just kind of saying it.
Okay. Well, and it's interesting too because the next quote here that we're going to talk about, right? You just mentioned like that is Elish Norn as the abuser and Karn as the abusee or the victim. Then we move on, and this next quote, unless you're not done.
No.
Okay. Then this next quote is Elish Norn as the abuser and Tezzeret as the abusee/victim. And so it's just, I mean, you've talked about this before, right? An abuser is an abuser. It's not, okay, Elish Norn abuses Karn. No. Elish Norn is an abuser, end of statement. So if there is someone that Elish Norn can find to abuse, she will do so. And so that's just who she is. And that's how, based on how she acts, that just is who she is. And so, this next line, is Tezzeret thinking to himself, but regarding Elish Norn? Patience? How often had he heard that word passed off to him in lieu of what he deserved? It was then that he understood. Elish Norn had no intention of fulfilling her promise. Her plan for him was to use him until he couldn't be used anymore, then cast him aside. Or worse, flay and rebuild him to be another lapdog like a Johnny. Whether the Seekers, Nicol Bolas, or the Praetors of Phyrexia, none who betrayed him in this manner would ever be spared his wrath. Not now, not ever. He locked his eyes on Elish Norn, pouring all his scorn, all his rage, all his hate into her image, so that he would never forget this moment. This moment when everything became clear. If it was a war Urabrask wanted, he would get such a war. Tezzeret would make sure of it.
So it's interesting what you said before, that you felt that it was clear that they were trying to redeem Tezzeret in this story.
Mm-hmm.
Because this proves the opposite. This quote is showing this war that is happening in his mind.
Okay.
Right? So, you know, we saw him much more humanized and having like a normal conversation with Karn. And, you know, hating the fact that the Phyrexians are winning, right? Despite the fact that he's helping them. And then, this quote is saying, I'm an abuse victim. And so how I'm going to deal with that is to abuse other people. And whether that means it's the person who abuses me or whether it means it's the woman later on in the story, whatever her name was, that, you know, wouldn't give him the status update.
Rona.
Rona,
disciple of Gix or whatever.
Right. So, you know, this quote, I had you write the whole thing down despite how long it is, because the specific words are very important. You know, he's saying patience. Why do I have to be patient and wait for what I know I deserve? Now, that one is kind of teetery. That one's kind of on a seesaw, right? Because you've got a victim realizing that they don't deserve to be abused. But on the other hand, you've got someone who's very angry, learning or deciding, right, that they don't need to have patience or gain perspective and mindfulness, right? Because they deserve more than they've been given, and now they're going to take it, right? So it's that this war that's happening in his mind, because he's learning that he needs to make a choice.
Okay.
And he's trying to make it. But he's sitting there going, okay, I need to not put up with this bullshit anymore. But that makes him so angry that now he becomes part of the bullshit, right?
Okay.
And so the redemption will really be him figuring out how to stabilize that seesaw, right? How to make it so that he is a good person. Because he's a bad person if the seesaw tips this way, and he's just being an abuser right back to everybody else, right? And then if he's on this side of the seesaw and he's sitting down on the ground, then he's just a victim. And so he isn't healthy at that point. So in order for him to gain that mental health, he's got to balance that seesaw. And we'll see if it happens. I mean, like I said, that seesaw is really moving up and down in this story. You know, he was very much this way, and then in this paragraph, he's very much this way,
Sure.
and then later on, he's still very much this way. So, but if they're trying to redeem him, it's going to go back.
Yeah.
So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if he actually ends up getting that balance that he needs in order to actually gain that redemption.
Well, I think it's funny. I think it's interesting that you put it that way, because I would look at it as him taking back his power, so to speak. And I don't mean in the negative sense of like power corrupts, but I mean like he's being abused, right? So he's being told, oh, don't worry, you'll get this thing. Come here, you can have this thing. Come on, come closer, keep doing the things that I'm asking you to do. And then every time he does something, they just pull it further away. And they're like, okay, now do that next thing. Go ahead. Oh, good, you did it, thank you. Okay, now do this next thing. Okay, go ahead. You know, and meanwhile, now he's saying, all right, that's it. They're never going to give it to me. I'm tired of this. Fine. Then this is how it will stop. We will go to war. So like, you mentioned Rona, but like Rona is working for the Phyrexians and doing evil deeds. So I guess I'm trying not to advocate for like, you know, an eye for an eye, right? Because that's not appropriate either. But I guess I'm trying to say like, maybe what they're trying to do here, the authors of these stories, is show him trying to take his strength and his life back by being like, okay, I'm not doing this for you guys anymore. This is what I'm doing now. Something to that effect.
Yep. Sure. But my argument is, and has always been, going the opposite way doesn't fix the problem.
Okay.
It's just a problem in the other direction.
Okay, so in other words, then he becomes the problem going forward. Okay.
Yeah. There is no good and evil. They don't exist. Everyone just is whatever they're capable of being in that moment.
Okay.
And in this moment, he's on this side of the seesaw.
And you mentioned Rona. So at the end, when Tezzeret is with Elish Norn and she's like cradling Karn's head, you know, like
creepy, like
yeah, so weird, and like talking to him and like trying to comfort him and stuff. She is having this whole conversation with Karn, and Tezzeret's just kind of there. And at one point, either Tezzeret says something, or just Elish Norn notices that he's still there, and she just looks at him and she says, "You're still here. Why?" And it's just like, holy crap, that's awesome. Wow, okay. So, yeah, guess I'll go.
I don't want to see this creepy bullshit anyways.
And so then he leaves, but he was told by Elish Norn, and this is the thing where she kind of pulled it further away. He was told by Elish Norn, okay, you're going to go be in charge of our Dominarian efforts. You're going to go back to Dominaria, and you're going to be the person in charge over there, basically. And he's like, that's when he's like, but you promised me that when I did this last thing I would be. And she's like, yeah, well, after this next one you will. And that's when he's like, okay, she's never going to do it. This is ridiculous. That's where that kind of quote comes from. And so that's when he goes to talk to Rona, because he still goes to Dominaria, but with the full knowledge of the fact that, like, okay, this isn't going to happen. I'm just going to do what I got to do and be my Mr. Sinister-y self, right?
Yeah, so if he had approached that in a healthy way, right, instead of saying, she's never going to give it to me, I'm going to hate her until I kill her, basically, I'm still going to go to Dominaria, and then I'm going to abuse Rona, the healthy way of doing that would be, oh, I'm never going to get what I want here, I'm going to go.
Yeah, I just don't know if that would work.
I'm going to go and create some self-reliance instead of so much reliance on this person who is not giving me what I need.
Well, and if you're using...
and refuses to do so.
Right. If you're using real world examples, then that's correct. I think Tezzeret at this point, one, is afraid that he'll die if he doesn't do what she says.
Well, yes.
Because he needs his Darksteel body.
Right.
But two, that they would just kill him. Like, if he just goes off to, like, work with the good guys, the Phyrexians will just seek him out and kill him. You know what I mean? Like, so, yes, if you're discussing someone in the real world dealing with real world adjacent situations, right? Not dealing with someone trying to take over the world who's, like, abusing you in that way, but, like, something similar, then yes, I agree with you. For Tezzeret in particular, don't really know that that is 100% accurate, but like I said, I get...
I mean, he's run away from plenty of other people in the past.
But they were people who would give him benefits that didn't save his life. They were just things that he would have wanted.
Right.
And so he could have walked away from that, because it's like, oh, am I not going to make money? All right, that's fine. I can deal with no money if I live. Or like my further machinations get me where I need to be.
Yes,
now
I understand that there's no real world parallel to a steel body that is indestructible.
Why not?
Tell me about it. But, you know, that's not the point.
No, I know. And then we get the end of the story. Can we talk about the end of the story for a minute here? It felt like it went off like a wet fart. It was just like, that's the end of the story? Why? Like, most of these stories, especially for Brothers War, I mean, typically they try to end stories on like a cliffhanger or on like a satisfying note of like the themes that have been running throughout the story kind of culminate in that one moment, and it's like a nice moment where you just sit back and you're like, wow, that was great. What a cool story. Or the story ends with this moment of, holy crap, it's that? What do you mean it's that? What do you mean I have to wait till, you know, the next story comes out or whatever? Like, I want to know now what happens. This was not anywhere close to either of those. Like, Tezzeret's talking to Rona, and Tezzeret's like, okay, how close are we to being ready? Rona's like, I don't know, 3 weeks, a month. Tezzeret's like, oh, okay, great. And what about the special forces? Mother's Elite. And she's like, oh yeah, they're ready. And Tezzeret says, good, one big happy family. That's the end of your story?
Yeah, I mean, the dialogue was very poor, I feel. But for me, that was a cliffhanger.
You think so?
Because for me, that was Tezzeret's on this seesaw. they want to redeem him, he's going to have to find that balance, and he's not finding it in this story. So the cliffhanger is he's very much sitting on the ground on this side of the seesaw. Can he get back?
Okay. I don't see it personally, but of course we will wait and see. I felt like what they were trying to do as the cliffhanger was not what you were talking about, because I'm sure most people aren't keyed in on that.
No.
But I guess what they were trying to do as the cliffhanger was like, oh, there's special elite forces that are it's like 3 weeks to a month away. Like, that's not an urgent thing that's going to be happening sometime soon. And even if it is, it's like, oh, what are they going to do? They're going to go after Tezzeret and Kaya and Saheeli and Jodah, aka all of these very strong characters, and you're going to send like stronger nameless forces at them. I wonder what's going to happen.
I mean, they did specify that, there were more of them than the Eternals.
That's on New Phyrexia.
Oh.
That's not on Dominaria. At least, again, based on how I read it, Tezzeret saw all of those forces on New Phyrexia, and when they have a method of traveling between worlds by using the essence of the world tree that they now have, they could send that, a portion of that force to Dominaria, but that is not, again, by my reading of the story, that is not what Rona was talking about. And so again, there are some elite forces, Mother's elite special forces, that are going to descend upon, I guess, Urza's tower, because that's where Jodah is, and that's where Teferi is, and that's where Kaya is, and that's where Saheeli is, and they're going to try to kill them. But they are nameless forces. They're nothing. It means nothing. Like, that doesn't scare me at all. That doesn't make me interested in reading it at all. It's like, they're Mother's elite. Okay, is Mother's elite Tamio and Ajani? Because if not, it's not interesting to me at all. Because it's, again, it is nameless robots that they're going to get to go, oh, that's how Saheeli kills that one. And then Jodah kills that one. And then, oops, Teferi fell and he almost died, but then Kaya killed that one. And now it's over. And like, you can make the fight scene good, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm implying is, that's not a way to cliffhang the end of your story, is like, but they're elite though. We used the word elite and special.
Oh my god.
That's it. That's how we end the story.
Mommy's favorite.
Yeah. And also, it'll take them a few weeks to a month to be ready. It's like, oh wow, that's terrifying. Whatever will we do? God damn it.
We have a whole 30 days to get ready.
Anyway, guess what? That's the end of this review. Truly, I mean, as always, with anything that we talked about, if you have comments, questions, concerns, opinions, things that we didn't talk about that you want to hear,
for my throat,
we will get there. That's why I'm trying to end the episode.
I'm asking the audience for it.
Yes, pour it right onto your phone or your computer, wherever you're watching this. Just pour water all over it, and then you won't be able to write us to complain because your computer will be broken. Please don't do that if that needs to be said. We'd like you to be able to continue to watch our things as well as just enjoy your time on the internet. But hey, like I said, that's going to be the end of this particular episode. As always, we want to hear from you in the comments down below about anything that we talked about today, anything that we didn't talk about today that you wanted us to talk about. And let us know what you think. Do you think Tezzeret will eventually be redeemed, or will he not? Will he just become a new, higher villain, basically, after this? Or will he kind of go to the Gatewatch with his tail between his legs and say, hey guys, I messed up, I need help? Maybe it's neither of those, but give us your thoughts in the comments down below. We would love to hear from you. And honestly, speculating on villains becoming good guys and discussing whether or not them taking their power back or just reflaming another whole new war, I think that's a really good way for all of you to join us as we show off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
That's right. Thank you so much for being here. We really hope that you all enjoyed. Please don't forget, as I mentioned at the top, to subscribe and ring that bell so that you will get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, including more JaARs in the coming weeks. Of course, we are hoping to finish these off. We've got 3 more to go, I believe. So stay tuned for that. It should be interesting. I can't promise what JaAR will be like following that. I have ideas, but it will all depend on time and availability. We're going into the holidays, so we shall see. But our content in general will still be here. Keep checking back for streams, JaARs, stuff on Video Games for All, Gluten Free for All, etc. We would love to see you there. And so, for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Mimi.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.